Hi, I'm Sexy. I'm a modder for Stardew Valley. In this video, I'll be giving an introduction to conditions. We'll be taking a look at this mod called Small Crystal of Birthdays. There's an asset called Small Crystal, and it's typically blue. I'm forgetful of NPC's birthdays, and I don't always like to check the calendar. So the Small Crystal changes color to a green hue if it's Vanilla's NPC's birthday. So let's check out how I set up the mod. So in my mods folder, I have Small Crystal of Birthdays, and I have the assets folder. That's just the small crystal when it changes color. Open the contents. So once you have your content patch, this is an example of a condition. Like for example, if it's day 6, you can put day in here, 6 in here. And where does this value come from? If you go to the content patcher documentation, scroll down, go to tokens and conditions, click on that and scroll down a little bit. There's a link that says conditions and tokens guide. Click on that, you'll come to this page. Almost all the information about the various conditions as well as tokens. So what are tokens? Tokens are values that can change. It's almost like if you remember in math class, they talked about variables and these variables can change. There are different variables that can change in the game, such as the dates or the weather or the status of the player, like where the player is located at, if they're at the farm or at the town, or the relationship may change. So depending on these different changes, you can set your content patch to activate once it fulfills those conditions. So you saw this one day. Days of the month go from 1 to 28. There are also days of the week, season, time, weather, daily luck, but I'm not going to go through them all. There is has flag, which is pretty important to use because there are different ways to activate a flag, and you can take advantage of that and put that as a condition. Another helpful one that you may use is has mod. If your mod is dependent on another mod, then you can set has mod as a condition. Once that player has that mod, then your content patch can activate. Day 6 can represent any season. So if it's day 6 of spring or day 6 of summer, it doesn't matter. This content patch will activate. If you want to narrow this down more, you can do a comma. Let's say if you want to make it only in the summer. If you remember the global token for that, it's season. Since summer is a string, you need to do quotations. Then type in summer. If you want to have another season, you could do other seasons as well, followed by comma. You could do winter. But what if you want to go even more narrow and you want to base it off of time? Comma, we could do time here, 6 a.m., which is 0600. However, that means it'll only happen at that time. Either we put commas on all of these, like 0610, comma 0620. We can keep going, but that's too much typing. So instead, we have another token for range. Many of these tokens have these sets of double curly brackets like this. What we can do is put range, colon, and the beginning of the range, 7 a.m., 0700, comma, and the end of that range. If we want to do midnight, then we could do 2400. You can even go further than that. If you want to go to 2 a.m., you could do 2600. For the content patch, it updates by the day. If you want to update within a day, you need to do another fields. You need updates. And there are 3 different types of updates. There is on day start, which is by default. So technically you may not need to write this, but I may write it if I want to keep it as a placeholder. But the other one is on location change. This content patch can update once the player goes into a different location. So either they go into the farmhouse, to a different map like the town. That means there's a map change. The last one that content patcher supports is on time change. So every time the clock changes, typically like let's say 6 o'clock, and it goes into 6:10, and if you have this for update, then it updates every time the time changes. So typically on time change is pretty reliable because it changes like about every seconds, but it's possible that on location change can be more fast because if you're standing right like at a door, you can just click on it and it automatically updates right there. But you can list them all if you want. So this sort of formatting for conditions is pretty basic. However, there is a different way to format conditions. And what you could do is day, then you have the pipe symbol, which is like the vertical symbol. you do shift backslash like this, contains equal, and you can list your values like this. So you can do 6, or if you want more, 6 or 7 or 8. And then over here, you could put true. If you want to do every day, any day except those value, instead of true, you'll have to put false. Same thing with season. Same thing with time. So sometimes you have a content patch. Let's say if you have another content patch where not birthday, and you want to make it so it changes when it's opposite of this, then you can easily switch out these values. You change this one to true, this one to false, and this one to false. So this is typically the preferred method of setting conditions, at least from my perspective. Now, conditions are a bit broad, and there are different nuances to conditions. For my mod, I'm using something called query. For vanilla NPCs, they have different birthdays depending on the season and day. What if I not only want day, but also that it has to be spring and a specific day? So I have a token of season, and it's in the single quotes if it matches spring, also in single quotes, and the day. And if it's in a list, you'll need to do in and parentheses, single quotes at all these different values. Or if it's in different seasons, summer and the day, and at the end, I set it as true. And this type of condition is a little bit more advanced. When you just keep modding, eventually you'll just start learning these skills. So I've talked to you about global tokens, and these tokens are set by Content Patcher. However, in the next video, I may teach you how to create your own tokens. I'll see you in the next video.